Coordinator personality types. Boy, do they have it hard as managers. So we talked in another video about the three core personality types that managers have. The shaper, the coordinator, and the engineer. Now, I made it clear at the time that this is just a framework. We're more complex than three categories that we fit into. But those three categories are pretty solid, and you will start to identify pretty quickly whether you fit into one of those categories or the other. And you will generally find, oh yeah, I'm a shaper, oh yeah, I'm a coordinator. So this video would like to talk about coordinators and their strengths and their weaknesses and what they should be aware. So if you're a coordinator, this could be very good for you. If you're working for a coordinator, pay attention. You may find that you're working for, potentially, with a bit of growth, one of the best types of bosses. Now, I'll reiterate, this is just a model, and there will be people that across a whole spectrum, but this is a pretty good model to work with. It really is. You tend to find that your managers strongly fit into one of these three categories. So a coordinator is very often what you would think of as an HR manager. They're for the people, by the people, to say, to be kind. Coordinators are very, very often reluctant managers. They're people, they're team players. They work really well inside of a team. They're very dialed into how a team's feeling and how people are thinking. And they have a underlying desire to be liked. And that's probably one of their biggest hurdles. Now, if you're a coordinator watching this thinking, I need to learn how to become a better manager, that's the number one thing. Striving to be liked by your team will be your downfall. Now, that's not to say that you can't be liked by your team. In fact, a good manager should be liked by their team. But hopefully through this video, you'll start to see that you can get liked by your team in a way that's more constructive for you as a manager and actually your team is striving for. But what tends to happen is coordinators tend to be team players. So they will tend to start a conversation and get a committee together. They're really great for engaging their team and getting the best out of all of their team, but then the team will make decisions on their own. The coordinator as a manager will often tend to be an observer. They're not the sort of one to shoot down the silly idea because it might make them unpopular. They're not the sort of one to take control and say, well, that's great, but I prefer that we go this way because in the back of my brain I'm thinking about all the other things I need to do this month, and that fits in best. They're not prepared to take charge. They sit there and drive committees. Now, another thing that's quite unique to the coordinator is they will even allow a decision to come out of the committee that they don't agree with. And that's on the basis that the consensus is the way to go. You start to get an idea of how coordinators work and how they function, especially when you understand that a coordinator is very empathetic for their staff, but is also very much against any sort of conflict and will tend to scurry away from conflict. In fact, there's many a reluctant manager who was a coordinator who gave up management altogether simply because they found it too hard. They ran into the situation where actually you need conflict at times, it needs to happen, and they didn't like it. And they were unhappy. Okay, so here's the hint. If you're a coordinator, listen to this, and it's not babble, it's truth. Have you noticed that no matter where you are in the world, no matter what a political system you're under, no matter what team you're a part of, no matter which sport you play, that there develops a hierarchy. We always have leaders. We always create a system where we admire people that achieve a lot. We have a great deal of respect built into us, no matter which culture we come from, for our leaders. We tend to put people up on a pedestal, and if you take a room that has no leaders, they will start to emerge. Now, if you have natural leaders, they'll come up to the top, but if you don't, if you specifically pick a whole lot of people that aren't leaders, that are solid team members, but have no desire to lead, and leave them to their own devices, someone in that team, or even more than one, will eventually start to lead, will start to go to the front, both by their own volition and because they're being pushed by the team. Now, there's a reason for that. As a society, we need Leadership. We need the structure. It's a societal structure. The same thing that drives you to be liked and want to be a part of, that social belonging, that same drive is the same reason why your team members need a leader. Now, we in our mind have a lot of ways of defining what leadership is, but one of them is leadership, strength and direction and opinion. We tend to really admire, no matter who we are, leaders that have conviction and know where they're going and know what they want to achieve. We tend to migrate towards strong people. Shapers tend to have team members that like them because they're shapers, and not a small number, a lot. So long as a shaper is able to control that sort of gritty, aggressive side of their personality, we like to follow somebody that really knows where they're going and why they're going and stamps out any controversy, gets the whole team to go in one direction. Now, one of the problems that happens with coordinators is teams will fracture off because there's nobody going, no, get on board, we're going this way. Discussion and that collaboration is really good. In fact, it's brilliant, and shapers don't tend to do that. But the next step after that is, okay, we've made a decision and we're going this way, everybody on board. And coordinators are rather poor at that. Your team needs that. They need you to be a leader, and the more you're a leader, the more you make gentle but correct hard decisions, including pulling the lazy guy into line that's leading the team down. The more that little areas of conflict that are necessary come to play, the more your team will respect you and like you. So going about being a coordinator and soft and trying to be liked and allowing committees to fracture into different forms to go somewhere is not going to achieve what you really want to achieve in the long run. Both success as a manager and also success as being liked and respected within your group of your team. So become transactional. Start to realize where you need to step outside your comfort zone. You know, there's that wonderful saying, everything great in change happens the other side of our comfort boundaries. Step out there, but do it deliberately when it's appropriate at the right times and when you know this needs to happen. Because one thing I know about coordinators, you always know. You always know it should be happening, but it's having the courage to do it. So step out there, drive forward, invoke your inner shaper, and move forward. Now, one thing I'll say in the end, if you're going to be a manager as a coordinator, you either learn appropriate transactional analysis and when to move into the commander role, the shaper role, or you will eventually build up to explosive level and your team will get it in a very inappropriate way. Now, that is usually how coordinators eventually learn the boundaries. They exceed them before they come back. Don't be that guy or girl. Strategically push yourself outside your boundaries and realize when you need to take charge and leverage back on the really good stuff that a coordinator brings when you don't need to be in charge. And you will become very rounded. Transactional. That's what it's all about.